So, as I mentioned in a previous audio video, I did listen to Comic Drake's video that he did about a couple months ago, 2 days before my birthday, on July 23rd of this year, where he talked about the whole Ken Penders situation, basically entitling it "The Man That Killed Sonic." And the overall video I thought was very well done. You know, he brought up a lot of things that we kind of knew about, some things we didn't know about. But overall, it was a very good watch and very informative. And yes, he did touch upon some things that we, as fans, as readers, really weren't fond of. And it may have taken us years to kind of catch up on, but, we weren't fond of when we found out the truth. For example, he talked about the fact that, when he got to Scourge towards the end of the video, he basically mentioned 150. He mentioned the issue 150. And of course, the scene where it's implied that Scourge posing as Sonic and Bunny, who's unaware that that's evil Sonic, thinking it's the real deal, her world Sonic, had sex together because they were waking up from being under a tree. Basically, the scene implying that they had sex, if you know what I mean. He also brought up the whole Jeffrey or Jafra, situation with Sally, and how Ken basically wanted to try to go with that idea, but didn't, and tried to argue the fact of, from a legal age perspective, of why it was perfectly okay, despite the fact that Jeffrey or Jeffra, whatever you want to call him, is in his 20s and Sally's in her mid to late teens. So it's kind of awkward, and if not disgusting. So, he touched upon all of that. He touched upon all of that, as well as some other things. He touched upon the legal documents. He pointed out that when one of the first documents was first copyrighted or whatever, that it was mainly for the stories and the artwork, not the characters, which was kind of interesting that he pointed out. And if that is the case, then if they wanted to bring it back up, they would have a decent argument of saying, hey, look, Ken, when you filed this, you only wanted the artwork and the stories. You said nothing about the characters. He even brings up something from a previous, a previous post on, I think, Sonic Stadium years ago, almost a decade ago. Well, Ken Penders himself, I think when interacting with the fans, kind of Q&Aing with the fans or something, actually said that everything he had created for the book, the stories, the characters, were all Sega owned. Basically, he acknowledged in one post that all the characters were owned by Sega, though even the ones he created. So, Drake, pointed that out, which was very interesting, because it's like, well, if he himself said this on a message board interacting with the fans, then, knowing the internet, that's still out there, as evident from the video that Comic Drake did. It's basically, if that's still out there, then that should be proof enough. That should be proof enough to basically say, yeah, Ken actually said this himself. Look at here. Now, true, this being a message board, Ken could deny it and say that's just somebody posing as him. But if they would have looked maybe a little more detail-wise, they'd probably be able to figure out, yeah, Ken, this is you. Why would you say this and then later on say something else? That doesn't make sense, to anybody. That doesn't make sense to anybody. Anyway, though, basically he brought up that. He brought up that, which was surprising. Now, he did kind of play devil's advocate on both sides of the spectrum. He did kind of agree that Ken, when the opportunity did present itself, had a right to do what he did. And that Archie had no one to blame but themselves, because they should have had, the documentation of Ken's, agreement that he's a work for hire, a freelance writer, and that anything he creates and writes about and whatever, for the Archie Sonic comic book becomes property of Archie Comics and Sega themselves. But they didn't have that proof until later on with a photographed version of a form, which even Drake would kind of find is a little suspicious, because that could be manipulated in some shape or form, or just, doesn't really match up with the original agreement signed by Ken, between Ken and Archie Comics, I should say. So, yeah, Drake brought up a lot of this. And again, I thought it was very, very well done. I really believe it was. It was very, very well done. He touched upon he even touched upon the whole Ben Hurst and Ken Penders debacle, and how, Ken stabbed Hurst in the back when, Ken got word that Ben, back in the early 2000s, wanted to do a Sonic continuation of Sat AM, either as a new season or a movie, which even Drake felt was, very, underhanded. Heck, he even parodied it by dressing up like a Sith Lord or a dark cloaked figure, saying, impersonating Ken in a courtroom, telling Sega, hey, Hearst wants to take Sonic for his own, and da-da-da-da. And I thought that was very fun. And that was a bit funny, I will admit that. But overall, the video, like I said, was good. The essay in this video, the research was very well done. And he even pointed out that Ken is still trying to take, I guess, certain parties involved with the Sonic lore and the Knuckles lore and all that to court. He pointed out the whole, situation where basically Ken was upset that not just the first Sonic movie, but both Sonic movies, basically, both Sonic 1 and 2, that Ken was upset that, Paramount and Sega were using echidnas in the story. And that he had basically said that those were his characters and not Sega's, which is total BS. It's total BS, let's be honest. Ken knows that's BS, right from the get-go. I'm sure his own wife, and I say this with all due respect, his own wife knows that's BS. So I don't know what Ken is thinking in that area, and neither does Drake, why he would make this argument. He's even talking about, Ken going after other parties as well because of, intellectual properties that he feels is his, that they shouldn't be using. He basically states that Ken, even to this day, is trying to, take people to court over the most ridiculous situations when it comes to the Sonic comic, when it was under the Archie license, and the Knuckles lore and all that. I mean, Comic Drake basically said it best. Can you imagine Ken Penders' reaction when the Knuckles series comes out on Paramount Plus soon? And how that's going to tie into lore and everything. What's he going to do? What's he going to do? Try to use that as evidence, saying, oh, those are my characters, I'm going to take you to court. Drake, like I said, finds it, even finds it ridiculous, because it's the fact that why would you try to take a major studio to court? Why would you even attempt to do that knowing you're going to lose? It's a no-win situation. Now, he did bring up the fact of the whole Sonic Chronicles, Dark Brotherhood deal, and the whole debacle that caused, to the point that we didn't get a proper follow-up on the game, and it's left on a cliffhanger, basically left to the fans' imaginations. He even, Drake even brought up the ridiculousness that Ken wants even people that do fan art and fan fiction stories of his characters, or stories that involve his characters, or artwork involving his characters, that he wants them to credit him, copyright him, for those characters being in there. And it's like, Ken, do you not understand the difference between official and fan work? Or official fictional stories and fan fictional stories? Hello? Nobody has to copyright anything because it's fan-oriented, not official. And like I said, Drake even found that ridiculous. He even found it ridiculous that Ken decides to take Shade's identity and give it to Julie Sue. And it's like, what's the purpose of that? What's the point? You do not own Shade. Let's be honest. Some might say he does, but technically he doesn't. Shade, let's put this to bed right now, was inspired by Julie Sue. Yes, they have a similar backstory and everything, but she was inspired by Julie Sue. Not the same character. Period. Not the same character. Inspired, not the same character. But yeah, he basically touched upon all the things that we've known about, we have heard about, some things, like I said, we didn't know about, some things that were even new to me. Like I said, the whole message board thing on Sonic Stadium years ago. And I have to give it to Drake for doing the research that he did. He even credited the sources where he got his information from, to be able to make this video. And overall, I highly recommend you check it out. Because here's a guy that doesn't just look at Sonic comics, he looks at all comics. Marvel, DC, Image, IDW, you name it. He even heaped praise on the IDW book, which I admit is good. It's actually, after its, starting point and everything, has actually gotten a lot better. There's no doubt about it. I mean, sure, it's had some ups and downs, the metal virus being one of them, but still, with that exception, it's actually done very well. And I will agree and attest to that. But here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. Drake, like I said, he does, Drake basically doing this video touched upon Ken's past as well in the industry. He touched upon the fact that Ken had worked in other areas. Ken's not a very notable comic book writer or anything to that extent. But he did get his start working on several publishers, or working with several publishers. Those being DC Comics, Marvel Comics, Walt Disney Comics, and so on. And, that's a great resume to have when you're coming on board. He even touched upon the fact that one guy was being I can't think of the guy's name right now, was being approached to be the new writer, couldn't do it, but then suggested Ken Penders, and that's how Penders got the job, and obviously based off his resume. But what he also pointed out, Drake did, is the fact that Sega, and a lot of people have pointed this out as well in their videos, Sega really didn't do much when it came to basically overseeing how things were, taken care of in the book. Like, in a way, from what I'm understanding here with Drake bringing this up, he basically believes, in my opinion, from what I could tell, that had Sega kept a close eye on what was happening when Ken Penders came on board, that we wouldn't be in the situation we're in right now, or they wouldn't have been in the situation they were in years ago, or several years ago. They wouldn't be in that. Instead, things would still be going smoothly. Things would still be going without a problem. But because Sega didn't really pay attention that much to what was going on, pretty much Ken and his crew were given free rein. And that sometimes I should say, that's a good thing depending on who the writer is, and sometimes it's a bad thing. And we all know that. We all know that. But But overall, like I said, the video is very well done. And like I said, Drake does more than just talk about Sonic comics. He talks about other comics from the other publishers as well. And I highly recommend checking out the video. I'll try to link it here at the end, as well as even check out his channel. I might check it out for other, details and information and stuff that he has on other comics, history, if you will, on other comics as well. But yeah, overall, I thought it was very well done. I know I'm repeating myself saying that, but I thought it was very well done. And hopefully, maybe down the line, he can do more follow-ups. I mean, I'm surprised he didn't really touch upon, why Penders wanted to kill off Sally Acorn. I would love to hear his take on that. There's the whole situation with Carl Bowlers and Jonathan Gray and all that could be touched upon. That's something I would recommend a Comic Drake to look into. Because to me, that's another story that's worth really getting into. Maybe not as informative and interesting as the whole Ken Penders, situation. But Jonathan Gray, Carl Bowlers deal, that's something to talk about. But overall, I thought it was good. I thought this video was good. I thought this essay, researchable video was good. I mean, like I said earlier, he touched upon the whole Scourge situation, with Ken Penders, and how he basically, with 150, made it implied that, Scourge posing as Sonic had slept with Bunny, well, not just slept with Bunny, but had sex with her, and again tried to, and again, he also mentioned the fact that he wanted to get St. John with Sally, which from an age difference does not work despite your attempted justification and all that. But when he talked about that whole situation with Scourge having implied, having that moment with Bunny posing as Sonic, quote unquote, in 150, he did touch upon Ian Flynn's, involvement in the comic later on, and how Ian Flynn basically, came in, cleaned up the mess that Ken and some of the others left behind, and took the evil Sonic concept of Scourge, the evil Sonic concept that was made by Ken Penders, I should say, and remodeled it into Scourge. That's what he did, to basically not only make Scourge his own character, his own unidentified character, but as a result, make him into a fan favorite, which he has become. He has become a fan favorite. However, Ken somehow took umbrage with this because Ken felt that, wait a minute, that's my character. You have no right to do what you did. I own Scourge, and I'll do what I want with Scourge. And somehow he got the copyright for Scourge. But then what's crazy is when he tried to sell off Scourge, license out the Scourge character as Scourge the Demon, or whatever you want to call it, to an independent company, webcomic or independent publisher, it didn't last long. I think rarely saw a publication or release because of the fact that the people that Ken had licensed it out to, let's just say they had some issues that were very illegal. They were very illegal to the point that that first issue, like I said, rarely saw the light of day. But here's the thing, though, that, again, Drake kind of felt was a little confusing. Ian Flynn comes on board, remodels, gives Evil Sonic a makeover, turns him into Scourge, thus erases any possibility of potential litigation, I should say, any possible litigation, in the future, because now he's not Evil Sonic anymore, he's Scourge. He has a new look, he's a new character basically, he's not the same. The only identifying thing is his jacket, but the leather jacket even has flames on it. So he's basically not the same character anymore. He's his own character. But yet Ken Penders, I guess, found a way to basically point out, yeah, that's my character. It doesn't matter if you remake him, give him a new look. He's still my character because you didn't get my permission to do that. Now, some could agree that Ken has an justifiable argument, and some may not. But the point is, whether you agree with that, or you don't, or you agree with what Comic Drake pointed out in this video, it's ridiculous. It's like, okay, fine. You own the rights, you own the copyright, if you will, to a version of Sonic that has sunglasses and a leather jacket and leather boots. Whoopee, okay? So you own the rights to that. But what Ian did here is he found a loophole, in my opinion. And I think that's what Drake tried to even point out. Ian Flynn found a loophole that basically shows that, this is not the same character anymore. He's not even calling himself Evil Sonic anymore. He's calling himself Scourge. Now, people could say that Ken could point out several incidences, if you will, in the book to where, it's referenced that he's Evil Sonic. I mean, some might say, if you look at, what was it? The whole Moebius invasion storyline, and the ending of it, where Scourge is basically arrested, finally by the Zone Cop and everything, and it's acknowledged that, he's basically now he's basically gone through a mutation that puts things at risk, more so than what they are, and then you have him basically acknowledging, hey, call me Sonic, call me Evil Sonic, Anti-Sonic, whatever. Some could point out to that moment right there as, Ken probably finding evidence of saying, see, this is my character. And here's the thing, even if he looks at that as the smallest detail of evidence he could use to get the rights to the character, it shouldn't really mean anything. It really shouldn't mean anything at all, in my opinion. It really shouldn't mean anything at all, in my opinion, because it's just the smallest detail. That's the only time since he had his makeover in, 161, 162, that he acknowledged himself as being Anti-Sonic, Evil Sonic. All right? That's the only other time. All the other times before and even after, he's Scourge. That's it. But yeah, even Drake felt that this was kind of ridiculous for Ken to do. And that even though he found a way to legally do it, trying to license it out under, the name of the character, but under a different species or whatever whatever he was presenting him as, demon, whatever you want to call it, Drake does point out that wasn't a smart move by Ken, because Ken was dealing with people that were doing some things illegally behind the scenes that, got the comic canceled, even before it rarely saw, like I said earlier, the light of day. So yeah, for most of the video, yeah, he did go on a bit of a Ken Penders bashing, path, if you will. He went basically down a bashing path or negative critical path on Ken Penders and everything he's done. But he did fairly side with Ken on certain things, like I mentioned earlier, with the whole copyright situation and all that at certain points. But overall, he did basically acknowledge that had Ken just left well enough alone and not made a big fuss about this, that maybe we wouldn't be where we are right now, where Archie doesn't have the license anymore and IDW does. And so, yeah, basically, Drake overall does agree that all Penders had to do was keep his mouth shut, not make a big deal about it, do the right thing and just go and talk to Archie, go and talk to Sega, point out the fact that, hey, I notice you're doing this, can you not do this, please, ease and all that, let's work something out to where this could be kept the way I want it, but you could also get what you want. That's basically the vibes I'm getting from Drake's video after watching it, that he feels that if Ken would have just worked something out to where it's like, hey, keep things as I left them, but let's also work out to where you can also have what you want, in an agreement that we'd be pretty much better off for it, but unfortunately we're not. But overall, I highly recommend checking out the video. I really do. I thought it was great. I thought it was very well done, like I mentioned. And I hope to see more out of this. And Drake, if you are watching this, Comic Drake, if you are watching this, I don't know if you do because you said you've gotten off Twitter, so I don't know how to contact you. Maybe I can look up your email, see if I can get in contact with you there. But Comic Drake, I'd love to see more videos like this in the future. And if I can make a suggestion, look up the whole Carl Bolas, Jonathan Gray situation. And you'll be surprised that Ken is even involved with that a little bit towards their run with the comic. And you will see how he tried to resolve certain issues, tried to maybe correct issues, but also kind of make them a little worse than what they are. But let me know. But overall, guys, let me know what your thoughts are down below. Comment if you like. Live chat during the premiere. Like the video. Super chat, super stickers are open. Super thanks afterwards. But yeah, like I said, super chat, super stickers during the live chat are open of the premiere. Super thanks after the premiere. Check me out at BW Roses Discussions, all your favorite audio podcast locations except for Pandora. Also check me out at deviantart.com/BVW1979. Also check me out at VENMO at BW Roses for content you can't get anywhere else here on YouTube. Also check me out at my Teespring store for merchandise you can't get anywhere else. Also check me out at patreon.com/BW Roses with a $1 or $3 tier. Check me out at Venmo. Support me there at Venmo at Brian-Walmer-2, Cash App at BW Roses, where you can support me immediately financially, and I will automatically get the finances there as well. But guys, just wanted to come on here, give my overall thoughts and reaction to Comic Drake's video. Let me know what your thoughts on it. If you haven't seen it yet, or you have seen it, I will link it here at the end. And until next time, guys, I am out.